Hey guys, Sheephead here with another video from Final Fantasy XIV. Today we're going to be continuing the hard mode primal guides, and we're going to be looking at Garuda Hard mode, also known as the Howling Eye. So before we jump into Garuda, I'd just like to point out that if you haven't finished Ifrit hard mode, then there's no way that you can currently do this fight. So if you're looking to unlock it, you need to finish the main storyline and do Ifrit hard mode. I do have a video guide, so click here on the screen if you need to see that before this. But for now, we're going to start with Garuda. So this fight is going to be one of the hardest you've probably done in the game up until this point. And the reason for this is that it's mostly a DPS check, but it has some pretty hardcore mechanics as well. It's for this reason that it's recommended that you kind of get at least a couple of pieces of Darklight gear, and if not, maybe even some pieces from Andaport Keep, before you sign up for Garuda Hard mode. Now let's talk about the fight itself. This fight is in two phases. Phase 1 is from 100% to 50%, and Phase 2 is from 50% until the boss is dead. So we're going to start with Phase 1. The first thing you're going to notice when you get into the instance is that there are 4 pillars in the center of the room. Now these play a massive part in the fight itself, but we're going to talk about them a little later. For now, we're going to talk about Phase 1 boss abilities. So the first ability that I like to talk about is called Windblade, and this is pretty much just an AoE cleave that happens in front of the boss, and it has a 180-degree cone. So basically, in short, don't ever stand in front of the boss unless you're a tank. It's for this reason that the first thing that you want to do when the fight starts is you want to tank him with his back towards the raid, and you want to tank him up against these stones, as you can see here. As far as positioning for the rest of the group goes, melee are obviously stacked behind the boss. However, range ideally needs to stay spread out from each other by about 5 yards, as the boss does use a second attack called Friction. When he targets a player and hits them with this, it's going to deal about 1000 damage. However, it's also going to deal half of that damage to any players within 5 yards, as you guys can see here. Now another thing that I'd like to point out is that it's a good idea to stay at least 5 yards away from any of the pillars as well. As I said previously, the pillars are a huge part about this fight, and they can actually take damage, so you want to stay away from them so you do not cause damage via friction, but we're going to talk about that slightly later. The next ability is called Slipstream, and this is a 3-second cast which once finished is going to stun the tank for about 3 to 5 seconds. As far as I know, this is not avoidable and cannot be interrupted, so you pretty much just have to take it. So DPS, you might want to watch your threat so that you do not overpower the tank. So the next ability is going to happen 3 times in Phase 1, and it doesn't really have a name, but we're going to call it Fly Away. So about 40 seconds into the fight, you'll notice that the boss disappears from the screen. In a couple of seconds time, she's going to come back and she's going to do a huge AoE which is going to be able to one-shot any player on the field. During this time, it's your job to run behind one of the pillars so that you are out of line of sight of Garuda, thus avoiding all damage. So as you guys can see, when the boss reappears for the first time, she's always going to be at a set place, which is the north side, which is where we were tanking her at the start of Phase 1. The second time the boss appears, she's going to jump to the center of the room in between the 4 pillars. So as you can see here, we just move to the outside of the pillars to avoid the damage. The third and final time the boss disappears, you'll notice that she's going to reappear at the east side of the room. So as you guys can see here, we move behind this pillar or any of the pillars just to avoid the damage. Now we're going to talk about the final ability that happens throughout this phase, and it's going to happen about 5 to 10 seconds after the boss reappears every single time. As you guys can see here, the boss has just reappeared and we're moving her back to where we were tanking her in the first place. At this point, you can see this emote pop up on the screen. When you see this emote, countless feathers rain from the sky, the boss is going to spawn a couple of ads called the Razor Plumes, as you guys can see on screen. These are going to then move as fast as they can across the room and to the pillars. Once they get there, they're going to start to do damage to the pillars, and this is bad news for you, because if they do too much damage over the duration of Phase 1, they're going to kill off the pillars, and that means that you won't be able to transition into Phase 2 without dying. So basically, as soon as you see this, the Countless Feathers Rain from the Sky emote, it's a good idea to drop any AoE that you have at the boss. So as you guys can see here, we see the emote, we drop our AoE to do as much damage as we possibly can while they're grouped up, and then the DPS pretty much just take their own single target and nuke down the rest of the plumes. Now one thing that I would like to say is that the first time and the second time that the boss reappears, so at the north side and in the middle of the pillars, she's going to do her plumes at her feet. So if you manage to drag her back to the north, then she's going to do the plumes there, and you'll be able to put the AoE underneath the boss. However, the third time, when the boss reappears, which as you guys know is at the east side of the room, she teleports to the center and then does the plumes. So all the plumes are going to be spread out around the outside of the circle. So when it comes to dealing with the third wave of plumes, you just want to take your own single target and just go around and nuke them. You have plenty of time, so don't worry, but just get them down. Okay, so now, if you made it to this point, you're about to transition into Phase 2. As you guys can see here, the boss teleports to the center of the room and screams the emote, "The Reckoning Comes." Now basically what happens here is that the boss is going to do a huge amount of AoE damage, which would one-shot you if you had no pillars left. However, the more pillars that you have left up, the less damage you're going to take. So it's for this reason that you need to damage the plumes as fast as possible in phase 1, and you ideally need to stay away from the pillars during the fight so they don't take excess damage from friction. Okay, so now you've made it to 50%, we're now going to enter phase 2. In this phase, the boss is going to gain a few abilities which are going to make it hard for you to move around the room, so let's talk about those now. The first new ability in phase 2, we are going to call Green Tornadoes. As you guys can see, she summons these 3 tornadoes, which are going to pretty much lock us into the left side of the room. If you walk inside these, it's going to do a huge amount of damage and it will kill you within a couple of seconds, so you want to avoid these at all costs. As you guys can see, when this phase starts, we instantly move to the west side of the room, and the tank is going to be tanking the boss in the northwest corner, so we don't get hit by the cleave. This is one of the safe zones in the room, and there's no chance that the tornadoes will be able to spawn up on us here, so that's why we tank it here. After about 30 seconds, we are now introduced to a new ability that the boss has gained in phase 2. As you guys can see here, the boss disappears, and when she reappears, we are joined by 2 extra minions. Now these 2 extra bosses pretty much have the same abilities that the boss does. However, they do grant specific buffs to Garuda herself. The first thing that you'll notice is that there is a green beam linking one of the adds and there is a red beam linking the other. The one that you want to DPS down first is the one with the green beam, and the one with the red beam needs to be tanked just behind Garuda by the off tank. The reason we deal with it this way is because the green one is healing the boss, so we ideally want to kill that first. Also, we don't let the tank pick it up because the DPS can nuke it down in about 20 seconds, and luckily this ad doesn't do too much damage. However, the red ad, it does a huge amount of damage, and it's for this reason that the off tank picks it up and takes it away from the group. Once the green ad is down, all the DPS should switch to the red ad and kill it off as soon as possible, and then continue to focus DPS on Garuda herself. Once both of the ads are dead, you will notice that the green tornadoes are going to start spinning in a clockwise motion. It is now the tank's job to move the boss slowly around the room, following this clockwise motion, so that you don't get caught out by the tornadoes. On your way around the room, you're going to notice that the razor plumes from phase 1 continue to spawn. However, this time, there is one difference. As you guys can see, a new plume by the name of Satin Plume is going to spawn up, and you need to DPS this down as soon as it comes up. If you don't, it's going to wipe the raid. However, once it's dead, you do not need to deal with the other razor plumes, as after a small amount of time, they simply disappear. Once you've travelled around 180 degrees of the circle, you'll notice that the boss is going to fly up into the air and do this emote, as you guys can see. At this time, you want to move out of the edge of the room and move into the center, as there's going to be a huge purple tornado which is going to do so much damage around the edge of the room. Once you move into the center of the room, all you need to do is just nuke down the boss as much as you possibly can. In about 20 seconds time, he is going to respawn the adds yet again. At this point, all you need to do is you need to group them up and you need to use an AoE limit break on them, which is pretty much going to kill them right out. However, as you guys can see, we only had a limit break 2 here, so we used that and we DPS them down in the same order as we previously did. The green ad first, followed by the red. At this time, the boss should be on relatively low health and you might even be able to kill her. However, if you don't manage to, it's just going to rinse and repeat into phase 2 again. So as you guys can see, we move out to the safe zone, which happens to be the north location, as you guys can see on screen. Once we're here, we simply nuke the boss down as much as we can until the plumes spawn, and then we're going to rotate in a clockwise motion and rinse and repeat until the boss is dead. So guys, this is the end of the Garuda Hard mode guide. If you have any questions about the fight, then please put them in the comment section below, or any suggestions, as I will answer every single comment that gets posted on this video. If you enjoyed this video, then please hit the thumbs up button, and make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the content that I have here daily on Final Fantasy XIV. As tomorrow is the weekend, I probably won't put a video up, as I do want to actually play the game instead of making guides all the time, but I'm going to be working on Titan Hard mode and getting my relic weapon. So the next video will be out on Monday. It's hopefully going to be Titan Hard mode if I manage to get that down, but if not, it'll be something to do with either the relic quest, or I'll do something on a DPS meter, or maybe a small guide on how to make some gil in the game, as I know a lot of people have been asking about that. So guys, thanks for watching this. I hope you enjoy your weekend and playing the game, and I will see you guys on Monday. Center, thus the safe zone is either the left or the right. Once that one disappears, you're going to want to move into the center, because the left one and the right side are going to turn into void zones. This just repeats 2 times over, so it goes center, sides, center, sides. Once this has happened, you're going to want to move back into the center and go as close to the boss as possible, because he's going to cast an ability called Repel. When he does this and the cast finishes, he's going to knock you back. Now, if you're in the center of the room, he's just going to knock you backwards. However, if you're at the sides, where you shouldn't be, he's going to push you off the